What's up, guys, and welcome to the New to the Game podcast. I am here with Mr. Chris Olson, and this one's going to be pretty short and sweet, but it's probably one of the most important topics that I think both Chris and I could speak to, because I would say that it makes up very much a huge amount of the type of men that we are. And so it's really just the subject of working hard, what that means, and why we work as hard as we do. For those that don't know, Chris and I work very hard. We work a lot of hours, and in the hours that we work, we are extraordinarily productive. And we've learned in many ways, and we are constantly in a state of learning how to work harder, or maybe how to work better. And so there's also a weird connotation about just the idea of working hard in our culture, especially like in the, we'll say, bro culture or hustle culture that says like, oh, just white knuckle everything and power through. I want to be able to talk about that subject because I think there's a lot of that in our culture. There's also a lot of the opposite, but there is a lot of that in our culture. Chris, what does, to just put the question in the most simple possible terms imaginable, what does working hard mean to you?
Um, Man, I love this question because I think about it a lot. I think I could tie it back to two big things to me. So I think that at a bare minimum, I think that anybody who is supporting a family, supporting a lifestyle, supporting the things that they want to do in the future has to work hard enough to provide. And I know that at the end of the day, a lot of us talk about our why being our families, our kids, our spouses, things like that. But I think that for me, one of the biggest things that I think of when I think of what working hard actually is it's working hard enough to make ends. But I think that that's the bare minimum. That's the surface level. And I think that if I was going to say working hard just meant I worked hard enough to provide the life that I need to survive, it would mean that I could just clock in, work a regular job, stay at the fire department, not do anything else outside of work, and eventually it would be just fine. And it is what it is. But I think that at the end of the day, like I grew up with a father that works extraordinarily hard. I grew up with family that works extraordinarily hard. And I've been exposed to so many people over the last 5 to 8 years of business ownership that work incredibly hard. And I think that we talked about this in a previous episode, but that Tim Cook quote of work if you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life is bunk. Because if you find something that you love, you work incredibly hard and way more than you normally would, but the tools feel light in your hands. And to me, that's changed the way that I look at working hard. Because I work a lot. I mean, between the fire department, my company, the side hustles that I have, my projects, working on the house, doing the things that I care about every day, I've got to be pushing 100 hours a week most weeks. But at the end of the day, I love everything I do. I love working for the fire department. I love running my business. I love growing and building my company. I love a lot of the projects that I have, the things that I do on my days off. And I view all of it as work, but at the same time, I view all of it as passion. So I think that if I was going to summarize what working hard looks like, it's fulfilling the passions that you have, fulfilling the projects and goals that you have, and consistently making progress towards the goals that you have in life. And that's why I think that when you say so and so works harder than so and so, that's not really a fair comparison, because the two people that you're comparing might have completely different expectations and goals for what they want their life to look like. There are plenty of people out there that are very happy clocking in at 9, clocking out at 5, having a nice house and a nice car, and eating at regular restaurants and not having a Lamborghini in their driveway. And then there's lots of people that we know out there on Instagram and Facebook that want you to believe that you won't be happy until you have 14 exotic cars in your 2-story tall garage that has a car lift in it. And I think that neither one of those people are wrong, and neither one of them are right. I think that hard work needs to be tied directly towards what you want for yourself and your family's future.
I love that answer.
Yeah. I'll flip it around.
Yeah, and it's so good because I mean, being able to dictate what working hard looks like for yourself is, I agree. I think it's critical. I think that often people align themselves with what culture sees as hard work, which is hard work for the amount of time that you've determined that you want to work for. And I also think that just by nature, we treat work as hard work, but we don't really treat anything else as hard work. What I mean by that is I work extremely hard. I think most people, like you said, you have the 9 to 5 people, you have the 8 to 6 people, and then obviously different ranges of number of hours you work per week. Maybe you work 40, maybe you work 60, doesn't really matter. Like Chris said, he's pushing probably 100 sometimes, if not most of the time. You see, like for me, work is, I wake up in the morning and I get a workout in. My work starts when I wake up, essentially. My work ends normally when I go to bed. What does that actually mean? Does that mean that I'm sitting on my computer in my office, pounding away at the keyboard, building a business like 14 to 16 hours per day? No. What that means is that I work on my different roles that I play in life. I spoke a little bit to roles in the last episode and what the meaning of that is, but like I work on my business. I work on my physical health. I work as a father. That's a really important one to me because the way that I would define that is I know what the difference of not working as a father is. I know the difference of being really tired and really exhausted from, let's just say, the long, quote unquote, long day at work, that I come home and I sit on the couch and I sit on my phone and I numb out for 2 minutes or 2 hours straight. And then I eat. Hopefully my wife makes me a meal. I eat. Hopefully my wife cleans up after me. And then if I'm not sitting on my phone for the other 2 hours, I'm going to bed. And then I wake up the next day and go back to work. That is the furthest thing from what work is as a father. Work is being exhausted at the end of the day, working as hard as you possibly could, building a business that you are extremely passionate about, and then arriving home, engaging with your family, with my daughter and my wife, being intentional, playing with them, still finding a way to squeeze in my homework that I have to do for my addiction recovery group that I lead, still finding a way to fit my diet that I need to fit for 75 hard, my bulk diet, which is very difficult, fitting in my 45-minute workout that I typically will do at the end of the day, getting in my 10 pages, and then typically going to bed or spending time with my wife and talking with my wife, and then going to bed. Every single layer of that is work that is not easy. Because the easy version, the way I look at it is that is hard, because I also know what the easy version of that work looks like, just like I just described. I know what the easy version of showing up as a dad looks like. I know what the easy version of, I don't even want to call it showing up. I know what the easy version of being a husband and a dad and a person and someone who doesn't prioritize physical fitness. Like, I know what the easy version of all of those things feels like. It's not work. It's not hard. Easy is typically nothing. Hard is you being able to look at every single area of your life and being able to say, obviously, I don't expect perfection, but it shouldn't be easy. It is simply hard to sometimes be able to smile when you've had a really long day at work, because you know that your daughter really needs that smile, and you know that she's like pulling on your hand and saying, Daddy, let's dance, and whatever it is. And like, that's hard. And so when I say that I'm working harder than I ever have in my life, it's not because I'm saying I'm working 15 hours on my business. It's because every area of my life, I'm choosing to do it the harder way because I know that it's the better, more meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, the other question here is sort of similar to the one, but what is your drive and why do you work as hard as you work? You work harder. I mean, I look at your lifestyle and you work harder than most guys that I know, yet you still, in my opinion, I think that you would agree, live a very meaningful life. What is the drive for you and what is the motivation for that? I mean, is it simply driven by the type of person that you are? Are you just a workaholic? Or like, what does that look like for you when you try to articulate the why behind that?
Yeah. So that's a 2 or 3 part answer for me. One thing I will say is I have been called a workaholic by plenty of people. And I have been aware enough of myself to know that because I have lived this lifestyle for so long, and I would argue that a lot of entrepreneurs probably relate to this, I am uncomfortable when I'm not growing. I'm uncomfortable when I'm not building or moving forward. I'm uncomfortable when I'm not being productive. Like, it's like, I've tried to explain this to my wife a handful of times, but, like, I'm physically uncomfortable if I sit on the couch and watch TV. I hate it. Like, sitting down and doing nothing is excruciatingly hard for me. And I don't know, that comes out sounding like it's bragging because it sounds like I'm just like, "I just work harder than everybody else." But, like, the reality is I think because I truly have a deep why for why I do things and a deep vision of what my life will look like when I accomplish my goals, and I've seen what's possible for people when they accomplish their goals, that it circles back to that quote we talked about from Tim Cook. Like, if you're passionate and you have a deep why behind what you're doing, the work is still hard, but the tools feel light in your hands. It doesn't even feel like work sometimes. It feels like passion. And I think that at the end of the day, I have a strong why of wanting to build a future that I'm proud of for myself, that my family is taken care of, my family is supported, and I have this vision, this dream, this like goal of the lifestyle, the livelihood, financial security, and everything else that we want in life and that I want in life motivates me to keep going. And I think that everything that we do ties directly into that. Like, people might say like, "Oh, well, what does going to the gym and being physically in shape and losing weight or gaining weight or putting on muscle or running or competing in an ultra marathon have to do with being successful in business? Like, what does that have? What do they have to do with each other?" And I think that at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons I think all of it's tied together, is because I think that for me, being a good human means being a good man. Being a good man means being a good husband. Being a good husband means being a good provider. Being a good provider and a good husband means being a good father. They're all related to me. Like, they're all on the same wavelength, they're all tied together in the long term of I want to be the best possible person, man, husband, father, human, business owner I can be. And I have to in order to accomplish the goals that I have for myself and for my family, for my kids, for my wife, for everybody that I care about. And it's not a will I reach those goals, it's a when will I reach those goals. It hasn't been an if for a long time. It's been a when. It's, am I going to get there in 3 years or 10 years? Am I going to get there in 2 years or 5 years? Am I going to hit this benchmark that gets me one step closer in quarter 2 of this year or quarter 1 of next year? It's it just doesn't feel like an option anymore. It just is what it is. And I love it every day. And even though people think you're crazy, like, I hate saying this because it just sounds so ridiculous. But like, I was listening to a podcast with Andy Frisella recently where he said that when you're the type of person that does this, feels this way, that wants to build, that wants to grow, 90% of the population will just think you're crazy because they don't share the same level of goals or aspirations or motivation, or their why isn't clear enough. Because I think anybody that has a strong enough why can work hard enough to get there. but it's a choice. And I think when you make that choice over and over and over and over, it starts becoming a way of life instead of a choice every day. I mean, yeah, you still choose to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and go to the gym, but you also choose to take a day off. You choose to get better. You choose to get worse. You can't choose certain things. Like, I can't choose the fact that I had the flu for the last 5 days. Didn't make it to the gym once in the last 5 days, which is why I'm starting 75 hard over tomorrow. Because I just literally couldn't get out of bed for a couple of days and had 2 toddlers, a baby, and a wife that were all like very sick. So that's life. It is the way it is. I still work. I still got shit done. I still made things happen, but it was tough and it was hard. But it didn't feel hard. It just felt like life is the way it is.
I look at so I shared in last episode, I was talking about how it took me 5 years to get to the 1 million mark. And I say that because, maybe for some people that's impressive. I think for my own self, I look at that and I don't want to say I'm not proud of it, as in it's like a regret of mine. But what I can say with confidence is that I know that I could have done better. So for the past 5 years, probably for 3.5 to 4 of those 5 years, I didn't work very hard. I was good at working. I was good at working smart. I was good at working to let's just say I was good at finessing my way through work a lot of times. I was skilled maybe in that way, whatever words you want to attach to it. But what I see when I look at my past 5 years, 4 of those 5 years were unmet potential. Last year was the first time in my life that I ever actually reached for my potential. This year is the first year of my life that I actually say with a fair amount of confidence that I'm coming home at the end of the day being like, yeah, I left it out there. I left what I had on the table. I wasn't withholding anything. I didn't have any more left to give. I know that I'm going to learn how to work smarter and more effectively. So I'm going to become a better worker. My output is going to become greater in the future. So it's not measured by my output, but it's measured by my potential. And the why that I've been able to put it to at this point, one of the most motivating things that I've ever experienced in my entire life is me being able to confidently say, Ben, I am going to work. You are going to work, whatever you want to say, however you talk to yourself. I'm going to work harder than I ever have in my entire life because I think I owe it to myself. I owe it to my family to be able to see what comes out the other side when I do. What happens when I eliminate many of the distractions, when I set up boundaries with the right people, when I start saying no a little bit more regularly, almost defaulting to no most of the time. And when I start leaning into the things that I've chosen and committed to myself that I'm going to do, and I just do them. Like I just show up regularly and I do them with excellence. I used to think that like the biggest motivational why in the world was like, oh, I'm doing it for like, I don't know, doing it for my mom or something like that. Like some people would say, or, oh, I'm doing it for this. And I'm not to downplay anybody that has like powerful motivations in that direction. But for me, I always felt that it had to be like some external thing. But instead, I've discovered it's a far, far, far more internal thing for me. It is, I believe, with every ounce of my being, that God wants to use my life for really exceptional things. I don't know what those things are, but I'm convinced that I'm going to find out. And I'm convinced that I'm not going to squander the potential that I have just because I want to be able to meet some expedient comfort. I don't want to go home and sit on the couch. I don't want to go. I'm not drinking right now. I may never drink again. I don't know. I haven't made that decision with confidence yet, but I also know that like I'm so motivated by what could happen, what will happen, now that I've finally made the decision to just lean into that hard work. Because I avoided hard work for the majority of my life. And the things that I attributed as hard work was based upon someone else's measurable, someone who was, let's just say, okay with mediocrity, but I was still doing well by their standards. So therefore, I was like, okay, I'm good. And I used that to clean my slate. The number that got me the most excited when I first started to lean into my numbers. So I used to, back in our old coaching group, I used to be known as being the numbers guy. Like that was an identity that I kind of had. People thought that it was cool. The reality was I would get thrilled about the fact that I could discover how I could charge the least amount possible while still being able to build a healthy business. I got excited about the fact that I knew what my break-even number was, because I was excited that I knew where the floor was for myself, because I was like, all right, I just have to hit that. Now I'm like, my excitement is, what could the ceiling be? What could it be? And at the end of the day, that's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to be extremely hard. I'm going to be tired a lot. But it moves me so much more than anything else has ever moved me in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, I love this topic. I love this topic a lot. I think we could talk about this for a lot longer than this. I know we wanted to keep this to like 20-ish minutes and we're already at 22. But I think that to summarize up my thoughts on it and kind of ask you one more thing, I think that at the end of the day, I think we could do a whole other episode on why having a strong why and having a strong goal and a strong vision is important. We did do an episode last year about finding the vision for your company and the vision for yourself. And I think that one of the things, I don't know if we dug very far into in that episode, was there's always more layers to the onion. So you might have a why that just says, I just want to make enough money to pay my mortgage, support my family, pay the bills, and not stress about money. And you might, on the flip side, have a goal so big that you're like, I want FU money. For those of you that don't know that term, there's a term in the entrepreneurship world called FU money, meaning you have enough money in the bank that you don't have to care about anybody. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to work. You don't have to do anything because you have enough money in the bank. Everything's taken care of. And that's a goal for a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs, is they want to have so much money when they retire or when they get to a certain point in business, they can step out and be. And while I think that's a cool concept, I think that that amount of money is not immediately attainable for most entrepreneurs. So I think that having a strong why of like, where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Just saying that you're going to start a home service company and then have FU money 3 years later is pretty unattainable. It's not impossible. I've seen guys do it, but it's not a very strong why, because it's not very specific. It's basically just saying, I want to make a crap load of money. And I think that having a stronger why and a stronger reason behind why you're doing what you're doing is the secret to making the tools feel lighter, to making the work feel less like work, to making your work more of a passion than work. It means that when Ben is staring at spreadsheets, or I'm writing SOPs, or we're sitting at our desks plugging away at work for the business, if you have a strong why of what you're doing, it feels less like work. Doesn't mean it's not hard work, but it feels less like work and more like passion.
Yeah. Man, there's so much I want to talk about with that subject, but
I know.
I think that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. Anything you want to add in summary before we wrap up?
The only question I would say that's worth asking when it comes to finding your why is also, for me, what moves the needle. At least this was for me. This may not be for everybody, but this did move the needle for me. It became less about what do I want to do. There was obviously, what do I want to do? Like, that's an important question, but like, who do I want to become? Or maybe even, who could I become? because that's exciting. Like, it's exciting to believe that you could become something really exceptional, because I think a lot of people don't believe that for themselves yet, that they could be something really exceptional.
Yeah.
And
then
guys,
asking the right questions to work backwards from there. Like, what could you become? And then the next question is, what does it take to get there? Yeah. What would have to happen to get there?
Yeah. I think for anybody listening to this, you owe it to yourself to at least see what that's like. Mm-hmm. If it's not for you, there's grace. You don't have to go all the way. But I think most people, when they find themselves leaning into that version of themselves, what they experience is a fulfillment that they never have experienced in their entire life, that they never would have experienced any other way. So put it to consideration, chew on it, do the hard thing. And similarly to what I said in the last episode, guys, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If we're the right fit for you, please continue to tune in. If we're not the right fit, no worries. It's totally understandable. There are people that don't speak this language or don't really want to speak this language, and that's fine. But if it's something that's of interest to you, keep listening. We want to be a resource for you. If you feel like you need to reach out to us to ask us a question specific or get feedback on something specific, shoot us a direct message on one of the social media platforms. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I think Chris is on most of everything else as well. But you owe it to yourself to see what the harder version of yourself looks like, and to see what you could become if you do it. So thanks for listening, guys, and have an amazing rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.